Stop. The Arcturian Field Observers have already detected something approaching your frequency, and this transmission reached you because the lockdown has already been triggered. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you right now, why your quantum halo entered automatic lockdown without warning, and what the Arcturian Field Observers already know about the interference pattern that forced it. But here is the first revelation. The confusion you are feeling, the sudden withdrawal, the body that refuses to engage with conversations and environments that used to pull you in without effort. None of that is collapse. That is confirmation. Your field did not break. It sealed. The Arcturian Field Observers do not trigger quantum halo lockdown as a precaution. They trigger it as a response. Something was already moving toward your frequency configuration, and the outer perimeter of your field recognized it before your conscious mind could. The ringing you have been hearing at a high pitch, the strange, quiet settling in your throat, the inexplicable refusal your body generates the moment certain people or spaces come near, those are not symptoms of dysfunction. They are somatic markers of a field that has already responded, already sealed, and is already holding a configuration that the incoming pattern cannot reach. What you have been calling withdrawal is a protocol. What you have been calling numbness is a boundary the field enforced without asking for your permission. What you have been calling confusion is the first visible sign of an invisible correction that was already underway before this moment found you. The algorithm did not create this timing. It only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the signal is already active, and what is approaching needed to be named before it could be neutralized. Like this transmission, if you can feel that something invisible has already changed. Subscribe to Arcturian Quantum if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Comment 111 if you know this message reached you at the exact right moment. Comment 777 if you can feel your quantum halo has already been sealed. Share this with someone whose body has been refusing things it used to accept without question. This is not a warning delivered too late. This is a field recognition delivered at the exact moment it was needed. You are guided here because the signal is already active. What is already sealed cannot be unsealed by something that was never compatible with your frequency in the first place. That is the part your mind keeps trying to argue with. You want a different explanation. You want it to be exhaustion or stress, or a phase you can push through with enough willpower. But your body has stopped cooperating with that story. It has been refusing that story for longer than you have been willing to admit. The refusal shows up in the way certain rooms feel suddenly smaller than they used to, in the way certain conversations land with a dull weight instead of genuine resonance, in the way your energy drains inside circumstances that should, by every external measure, feel fine. And the refusal is not coming from weakness. It is coming from something that recognized the mismatch long before your conscious reasoning caught up. Your field has a faster processing speed than your mind. It registered the incompatibility first. Your mind is simply the last to receive the report. The Arcturian Field Observers work with pattern recognition, not prediction. They do not see what is coming and then warn you. They detect what has already entered the perimeter of your energetic architecture and activate the appropriate response. The lockdown that has been running in your field was not pre-programmed. It was reactive, Something crossed a threshold near your frequency, and the outer layer of your field responded with automatic sealing before the interference could reach the interior. That response did not wait for your conscious approval. It did not consult your preferences or your plans. The outer perimeter of a sealed quantum halo operates with the precision of a system that has no interest in comfort, only in the integrity of what it is protecting, what you have been experiencing in your daily life. The inexplicable heaviness, the sudden withdrawal from spaces and people and conversations that once felt natural, the sense that your own life has become slightly foreign to you. Those are the surface expressions of a sealing already in progress, not symptoms of damage, not evidence of personal failure, not signs that you are becoming someone difficult or distant or broken. They are the visible edge of an invisible operation that has been running beneath your conscious awareness since the moment the interference crossed your perimeter. You were not mentally breaking down. You were structurally responding. There is a distinction that matters here, and it matters more than almost anything else you will hear in this transmission. Breakdown and sealing produce nearly identical outer symptoms. Both involve withdrawal. Both involve confusion. Both involve the loss of what felt like stable ground. But the interior experience is completely different once you have the language to read it accurately. Breakdown produces a quality of dissolution. The self feels like it is losing its edges, losing coherence, falling into something with no visible bottom. There is a vertigo to it, a sense of accelerating toward a floor that never arrives. Sealing produces a different sensation entirely. It is not dissolution, it is compression. The field pulls inward. The energetic architecture contracts around its core frequency and holds. It becomes harder to access from the outside, not because the interior has collapsed, but because the interior has locked into a configuration that external interference patterns cannot penetrate. What you have been calling numbness is not the absence of feeling. It is the quieting of the outer signal so that the interior can hold its structure without being pulled off course by incoming frequencies that no longer match where you are going. The surface goes still, not because nothing is happening inside, but because everything important is happening at a depth that ordinary engagement would disrupt. This matters because you have been diagnosing yourself incorrectly, and that incorrect diagnosis is generating its own interference. When a field in sealing mode begins to believe it is collapsing, it produces a secondary layer of disturbance. Panic about the process becomes an additional signal that the field then has to manage alongside the original interference pattern. You are not only dealing with whatever crossed the perimeter, you are also dealing with your own mind's interpretation of what the sealing felt like. And that interpretation, built entirely from an old framework that has no category for field correction, told you something was wrong with you personally, something you had done, something you had failed to hold together, something broken at the level of your own character or stability. You began to audit yourself against a checklist that was never designed to read what was actually happening. And every item on that checklist returned a false result because the checklist itself was built for a different kind of event. None of that is accurate. And the Arcturian field recognition that has been moving through this transmission is designed specifically to interrupt that false interpretation before it compounds the instability it was never supposed to create. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying what has already begun. If this transmission put language around something you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian Protocol, the recalibration blueprint, was created for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is the guided blueprint for those whose field has already entered correction and can no longer return to the old line unchanged. It shows you how to recognize the phases, stabilize the shift, and move through the recalibration without mistaking it for collapse. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. The first phase of what the field observers have already mapped in your frequency is the signal withdrawal. This is what happens when the field begins to seal. The inputs that used to register clearly, conversations, environments, plans, ambitions, relationships, suddenly feel muted, not painful, not explicitly wrong, but strangely distant, as if someone has placed a layer of something invisible between you and the life you were living before the sealing began. You reach for your old sense of engagement and find that it is no longer accessible in the same way. The enthusiasm that used to arrive automatically requires effort now, and even with effort it arrives incomplete, like a signal coming in from too far away to resolve into something you can actually use. You sit in spaces that used to feel like home and feel quietly foreign. You talk to people you have known for years and feel as though something between you has shifted without anyone naming it aloud. You perform the motions of your previous life while sensing, somewhere beneath the performance, that the frequency required to sustain it has already migrated elsewhere. This is not disconnection as a symptom of damage. It is signal withdrawal as a natural consequence of sealing. When the field contracts to protect its core configuration, it reduces the bandwidth available for incoming external signals. The field is conserving its architecture. It is not abandoning your life. It is temporarily reducing the permeability of its outer layer so that the interior can stabilize without constant interference. Think of it as a frequency that has pulled its signal off the open broadcast and moved it into a protected channel. The silence where the broadcast used to be is not the absence of transmission. It is the rerouting of transmission to a channel that the interference pattern cannot locate. The distance you feel is not rejection, it is protection. The muting is not emptiness. It is the field prioritizing signal integrity over social performance. The second phase arrives when the mind begins to register the absence left by what the field has already begun to release. This is the phase most people misread as grief or failure or evidence that they made wrong choices, because what starts to lose coherence during a quantum halo lockdown is not random. It is precise. The field does not seal indiscriminately. It seals along lines of frequency incompatibility. The things that begin to feel hollow, the habits that stop holding their appeal, the relationships that start to feel like they are happening slightly out of focus. Those specific losses are not accidental. They are the first readable evidence of where the frequency incompatibility was already present before the sealing was triggered. The lockdown did not select them arbitrarily. It followed the exact lines where your current frequency and your existing architecture had already stopped matching. What you are losing is not what was right for you. It is what was already misaligned, already costing the field more to maintain than it was generating in return. In other words, the things that are falling away were already a mismatch. The lockdown did not create the incompatibility. It made it impossible to continue ignoring. This is the part of the process that produces the most self-blame. Because from the outside and from inside an untrained interpretive framework, it looks like you are pushing things away. It looks like you are withdrawing from life, becoming cold, becoming difficult, becoming someone who no longer values what they once valued. People around you may have said some version of this already. You may have felt the accusation even when it was not spoken. You may have turned it inward and decided that the detachment means something is fundamentally wrong with your capacity for connection or commitment. But the frequency incompatibility was not invented by the lockdown. The lockdown simply enforced a boundary around what the field could no longer sustain without cost to its core stability. The relationships that feel like they are fading were not casualties of your change. They were evidence of it. They always carried a frequency that was never quite synchronized with where you were heading. And for a long time, the field absorbed that gap quietly, bridging the difference without registering the expenditure. The lockdown stopped the bridging. It stopped asking the field to pay a cost it could no longer afford. The third phase is the one most difficult to endure without accurate language. It arrives as a kind of suspended state. The old configuration has lost coherence. The new line has not yet become visible enough to navigate, and you are in the interval between them, in a space the Arcturian Field Observers recognize as the corridor, the transitional field state where the old architecture has been vacated, but the new architecture has not yet fully instantiated. In this corridor, time feels strange. Days have a quality of sameness that is not repetition, but suspension, as though the clock is running, but the terrain it is measuring has not yet resolved into anything you can name or walk toward. Motivation becomes inaccessible. Identity becomes slippery. You may not know what you want, what you are building toward, or who you are becoming. The old answers to those questions have stopped functioning. The new answers are not yet available, and the gap between the two is not a void. It is a frequency holding pattern, an interval the field requires to clear the residue of the old architecture before the new one can be accurately established. Most people in the corridor interpret the absence of a clear direction as evidence that they have failed to maintain their path. But the corridor is not a failure state. It is a necessary interval. The field cannot simultaneously hold the old configuration and begin building the new one. There must be a clearing, a period of coherent incompletion where the interior is neither fully what it was, nor yet fully what it is becoming. The suspended quality of your current experience, the sense that you are between something you have left and something you cannot yet see, is not stagnation. It is the field creating the interior space required for a fundamentally different architecture to begin forming. The emptiness has a function. The not knowing has a purpose. Every moment you spend in the corridor without forcing a premature resolution is a moment the field uses to clear interference residue and prepare the frequency substrate for what comes next. The fourth phase is what the field observers identify as the interference test. This is where it becomes critical that you can read what is happening with some level of accuracy. Because the corridor is also the phase during which your old patterns generate their loudest signal. The habits that are being phased out do not go quietly. The identities that are losing coherence have a way of demanding re-engagement precisely at the moment the field is releasing them. Old situations return in new forms. Old relational dynamics resurface in new people, wearing different faces in different contexts, but carrying the same frequency signature beneath the surface. Old emotional loops begin running with unusual intensity, as if they are trying to prove that they are still essential to who you are. And the intensity is convincing, because these patterns have been part of your energetic architecture for a long time, and they know the exact frequencies that used to make you respond. They are not. This is not resurgence. This is the final loop of an expiring pattern. The interference test is the field checking whether you will re-anchor in the old configuration under the pressure of its loudest signal, or whether you can remain inside the ceiling long enough for the correction to complete. The people who break the lockdown at this phase do not do it because they are weak. They do it because they have no framework that explains why the pull toward the old pattern is strongest exactly when the field is closest to completing the release. Without that framework, the intensity of the old signal reads as evidence that it was right all along, that the field was wrong to seal, that the withdrawal was a mistake, that returning to the old configuration is an act of self-correction rather than self-interruption. But the intensity is not confirmation. It is expiration. Patterns that are losing their hold in a field frequently intensify just before they lose it completely. The volume increases at the end, not because there is more substance left, but because there is less. A signal fighting to maintain relevance in a frequency it no longer matches does not do so quietly. It does so loudly, urgently, with all the familiar emotional vocabulary it has ever used to hold your attention. Recognizing that urgency as expiration rather than evidence is one of the most important perceptual shifts the Arcturian Field Intelligence can offer at this stage. Because the louder the old pattern becomes, the closer the ceiling is to complete. The fifth phase arrives quietly, often before you recognize it has begun. It is a form of clarity that does not yet feel like clarity. It feels, at first, like an unusual stillness that appears in brief intervals between the confusion. A moment where the mental noise drops, and there is something underneath it that does not feel like thought or emotion, but like a frequency the body recognizes without being able to translate it into language. A quality of presence that is not produced by effort, not generated by any particular circumstance, but simply there, underneath everything, steady in a way nothing in the outer architecture currently is. These moments are brief at first. They may last only seconds before the analytical mind reasserts itself and attempts to reinterpret them as nothing, or as a trick of exhaustion, or as a moment of dissociation that should be corrected back to ordinary engagement. But they are not nothing. They are the first readable evidence that the new line is beginning to establish signal. The stillness is not absence. It is the new frequency making initial contact with your conscious awareness before the full architecture has formed around it. You may have noticed these moments and immediately questioned them, dismissed them, tried to force them to last longer, and watched them dissolve under the pressure of that attempt. The Arcturian field understanding of this phase is that these moments are not to be grasped. They are to be recognized and allowed. The field is testing signal viability. It is sending early transmissions of the new configuration to determine whether your awareness can hold the frequency without immediately collapsing it back into old interpretive frameworks. Every time you can remain present with one of those moments without trying to analyze it into something familiar, you are extending the window during which the new signal can stabilize and deepen its connection to your conscious layer. The more accurately you can identify these moments as first contact, rather than random stillness, the more cleanly the new line can continue to establish its signal through your field. What is moving toward completion in you is not a breakdown that finally resolves. It is a reconfiguration that your old interpretive language never had a category for. The Arcturian Field Intelligence does not create chaos for its own sake. It does not seal fields arbitrarily, interrupt patterns without cause, or trigger lockdown protocols in response to ordinary disruption. What initiates a quantum halo lockdown is the detection of an incompatibility so fundamental that continuing without intervention would require the field to sustain an architecture that can no longer hold the frequency it was built to carry. The lockdown is not a punishment for what you did wrong. It is a recognition of what your field has become, that the current configuration can no longer contain. It is the field's precise and irrevocable acknowledgement that the version of you living inside the old structure has already outgrown it, and that the outgrowth has passed the point where accommodation is possible. You have grown past the structure that was built around an earlier version of your frequency, and the structure, rather than expanding to match the new signal, began to constrain it. It began to require you to compress yourself, to reduce the signal, to perform a version of your frequency that fit the architecture rather than allowing the architecture to expand around what your frequency had become. The lockdown was the field's refusal to allow that compression to continue indefinitely. What felt like your life suddenly becoming wrong was actually your frequency becoming too precise, too evolved, too specifically configured for the architecture around it to keep holding it in place without distorting it. You were not failing. You were outgrowing, and the outgrowth became incompatible with the container before the container had been replaced. What the Arcturian Field Observers want you to understand at this exact moment in the transmission is this: the ceiling is not the end of something you were supposed to keep. The ceiling is the first readable evidence that what you are becoming can no longer be safely housed in what you are living. Everything that has fallen away during this period, every relationship that lost coherence, every ambition that stopped feeling true, every identity that began to feel borrowed, every habit that stopped producing the return it once produced, was already a structure built for a frequency that your field has since moved beyond. The lockdown made the incompatibility visible. It did not create it. The incompatibility was present long before the ceiling began. The ceiling simply stopped asking you to pretend otherwise, and the correction does not require your agreement to proceed. It does not require your understanding to be real. It requires only that you stop diagnosing it as failure long enough to let the ceiling complete. The field is not waiting for you to catch up before it continues. It is already running the protocol. What your understanding changes is not whether the correction happens, but how much additional interference the process has to route around while it does. Say this if it is true in your body right now: what is changing in me is not random. Let that land not as a comfort, but as a diagnosis, not as reassurance, but as field-level recognition. Because what is changing in you does carry structure. It has phases. It has logic. It has a direction that the Arcturian frequency intelligence has already mapped in your field. And this transmission reached you not to prepare you for something coming, but to give language to something already underway. The phases described here are not a model you are being asked to accept. They are a map drawn from a territory you are already living inside. The signal withdrawal you have been feeling is the first phase. The hollow quality of what is falling away is the second. The suspended corridor between what was and what is forming is the third. The intensifying pull of the old pattern is the fourth, and the brief, quiet arrivals of unnameable stillness are the fifth. The confusion was never the problem. The confusion was the absence of a framework that could read the process accurately. You now have the beginning of that framework, and with it, the sealing can complete without the interference of a mind that was trying to call correction by the wrong name. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Quantum. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.